Hey everyone, John Michael here. First of all, I'm recording this on my phone in the garage because I kind of forgot the microphones and this episode is supposed to come out tomorrow. So, if it sounds different, don't freak out or anything. I recently got to sit down with Raph Brock, the District Fisheries Biologist for Texas Parks and Wildlife. We had a great discussion about our local ecology and the importance of keeping our waterways clean for everyone to enjoy, including the fish that we like to catch and sometimes eat. We also talk about invasive species like zebra mussels that have recently come to our area and what you can do to help stop them. Even if you're not a huge outdoor person or a serious sport fisher, you should think about buying a fishing license. All the revenue goes right back into funding fish stocking of local lakes and all the other great programs you'll hear about on today's episode. The licenses are only $30 and you can find out more about them and purchase them online at, get ready, there are a lot of slashes, but I'll also put this link in the show notes, tpwd.texas.gov/business/licenses/online_sales. I'll also put a link in the show notes to the Texas Parks and Wildlife Where to Fish page, which is a great resource if you want to, you guessed it, know where to fish. And if anyone is listening to this while fishing, please write into wpe@fortworthtexas.gov and let me know. Also, if you have any questions about anything water related, we'd love to answer them. Last thing, for anyone who hasn't heard, YouTube is a website where people can go to watch videos. We have a YouTube channel with 59 subscribers, and we really need to get to 100 so we can personalize our URL and make it easier for people to find us. So after you finish subscribing to our podcast on Apple iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts, go subscribe to our YouTube and help us get to 100. I'll put that link in the show notes, but if you just search for Fort Worth Water on YouTube, we should be the first account to pop up. You could also search for Caught on Camera, Haunted Water Department with 3 exclamation points on YouTube and find us pretty easily, but that's a story for another podcast. A huge thanks to Raph for taking the time to talk with me and for offering to take me fishing, which I just might take him up on. Thanks for listening. Hope you enjoy.
My name is Raph Brock. I'm the District Fisheries Biologist for Texas Parks and Wildlife Department, and our office is located here right below the dam on Lake Worth. To kind of give you a reference, we're right next to YMCA Camp Carter, and by district, the state is broken up into different fisheries districts, and our district covers pretty much the DFW Metroplex. It covers Tarrant County, Denton County, Dallas County, and Rockwall counties.
Oh, okay.
And people ask me what do I do all the time. I say, well, I try to make sure when people buy a fishing license and they go out fishing that there's ample fish for you to go out there and catch. Or if you need information about, different lakes and things like that, we always provide that information to people. So.
One of my questions was about fishing license, so I'll skip to that one. So does everybody who fish need a fishing license?
You only need a fishing license in Texas if you're 17 years of age or older. We also have a program where if you fish in state parks, you do not need a fishing license. But everywhere else, you need a fishing license. And a lot of people think, oh my gosh, not another license fee, things like that. But the way Texas and the way pretty much all the United States and North America is set up is that all your Texas or all your fishing license money goes back into the fisheries program.
Oh, okay.
We don't get property tax money, we don't get sales tax money, except on sporting equipment such as fishing rods, fishing poles, things like that. But for the pretty much part, it's a user benefit system. And so I always encourage people, even if you don't fish a lot or don't hunt a lot, but if you like going outside and things like that, pretty much that's where the funding source is. So I always encourage people, even if you don't fish, the fishing licenses are in Texas are only at $30 a year. And that's not too expensive. It's a good way to, I don't want to say donate, but it's it's a real good way to contribute to conservation in Texas.
Sure. So and you said so some of the sales tax money from like rods and stuff that comes to
sporting goods equipment, fishing equipment, and sometimes we get taxes from gas taxes for boat fuels, oils, and things like that. But for the most part, 90% of our money for our department comes from fishing license sales.
We'll encourage everybody to get a fishing license even if they don't fish.
That's exactly
But I was wondering, if you're just catching and releasing, do you need a license? Or
you do. If you have a rod in your hand with a hook on it,
Gotcha.
and some people think, well, I guess because there's some neighboring states. I believe Louisiana, if you're just fishing with like a pole, a cane pole, you don't need a fishing license. But in Texas, if you have a hook in the water, no matter what it's attached to, you need a fishing license.
Yeah.
And some people use a real funny looking little object where they get string and kind of wrap it around a can and use the can kind of like the pole, and you throw your string out there, which is pretty, it's pretty cool little fun
like
little thing
Tom
to do.
Sawyer kind of thing.
Exactly. But you still need a fishing license to do that. And like I said, I always tell people, we a lot of times we not neglect our resources, but we don't really. Okay, I'm using it, but I don't need. Do I have to pay for it?
Sure.
And I don't look at it as paying for it. I look at it as preserving it and conserving it. So it's kind of like a user fee. That's all I say. So,
is there a fine if you get caught without a fishing license?
There are. We do have a game warden, law
I'm
enforcement
willing
officers.
to bet it's more than the license fee.
I would definitely suggest it's more than that. And usually the game wardens are pretty lenient. Because
sure.
They're not going to throw the book at you first. If you just, maybe not know the rules or regulations, or you're confused about the parks. Well, I'm in a city park. Well, that's not the same thing as a state park. And so there is a little bit of confusion on that. But for the most part, if you follow the rules the best you can, you're not going to get in trouble. But yes, if you get caught and kind of being a malcontent towards the law enforcement, you're liable to get probably a $100 ticket or something like that. So, you have to go to a judge unless you want to pay it like a speeding ticket, something like that. So,
can people go to your website to find out all this information?
They sure can. We have a website, but man, like you can imagine, our department we have 1,000 different things on there. So, but we do have one specifically for fishing or fishing for hunting and anything like that. We also have license information. If people want to know where they can buy them online. Or they can buy them at any sporting goods store, Walmarts, academies, things like that. So it's pretty cool, pretty easy to get to.
If you want to, could you email me the best website for people to go to?
Yeah,
I can link to it.
Yeah,
and we can
I'll just
talk
make
about
it. I'll give you a couple of links. One link is just to the main page and get all kind of information, and then specifically to the license page, and also maybe we also have a where to fish page if people.
Oh, cool.
I live here, don't know what to do. Things like that.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, because I can link those in the podcast, and I'll put those in our social media too. So that'd be a good place.
Yes, for sure. And we have. Well, we can talk. We may ask me a question later, but we have a program called a Neighborhood Fishing Program where there's 5 sites in DFW, 2 here in Tarrant County, 1 in the city of Fort Worth, Greenbrier Park, and we stock it every 2 weeks with quality size catfish in the summertime and rainbow trout during the wintertime.
Oh, cool.
So it's kind of a put and take program to kind of get people started, or if you can't go out on a bigger lake or have trouble, leaving your house or going a long distance from your house. These are located in the middle of neighborhoods and stuff. Yeah. So it's just kind of
cool.
And that website has information about that too.
Okay.
And our first catfish stocking of the season occurs next Friday. And we'll have it'll be a big deal for people going out there fishing on Easter weekend. And
catfish is my favorite fish to eat.
Now, have you ever eaten crappie before?
I'm sure I have.
Okay, now, so if you've eaten crappie, I'll have to convert you. I'll have to invite you for a fish fry.
Yeah?
Everybody's a catfish guy until they have some good crappie.
Oh, okay.
Although catfish are good.
Well,
don't get me wrong. Most fish are good if they're fresh. That's the key. Even little, a lot of people, I love catching sunfish, like little bluegills or long ears or different species of sunfish, and cleaning them whole and cooking them whole. But it's just all the freshness of it to me. If you catch fresh fish, it's hard to beat. You can't go to a restaurant. Well, there may be some restaurants that I can't go to or can't afford to go to that have fresh fish, but for the most part, if you get fresh fish, it's unbelievable.
Changes everything.
It does. Yeah. It does.
Well, you already mentioned that, the Texas Parks and Wildlife website is huge, and your department covers a huge scope.
Yep, sure does.
So can you tell us a little bit about all the cool things that you guys do?
Oh, my goodness. Well, like I said, just for our office, so we're fisheries people. It's hard to say what we do, and we do so many things. Like you said, we go out on the lakes at least a couple of times a week to either survey the fish, which means we try to capture them, try to get some information from the population, or we go out and look at the habitat that the fish live in to make sure everything's adequate. Sometimes do water quality measurements to make sure the water quality is adequate for aquatic life. We stock fish certain times of the year. We go out and do outreach events for kids and adults, things like that. We go to Mayfest. We go to Dallas State Fair. We just got finished with I believe it's a Fly Fest over at the Tarrant Regional Water District puts on.
In the river
Park.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So it's a pretty big deal.
And you come to our Waterama.
Come to Waterama. Just anywhere we can get the word out about water and fish, because you can't have, I mean, we're allies, as the water department and fisheries. We're intertwined, and which thankfully we are. And it's like I always tell people, what's good for humans and water is good for fish. So if we take care of the water, usually the fish will take care of themselves. So, yeah, it's pretty cool.
You mentioned that you stock the lakes. Mm-hmm. Where do those fish come from that you use to stock the lakes?
Okay, well, like I said, we do have a program called the Neighborhood Fishing Program, where we stock certain lakes in the DFW area every 2 weeks with either catfish during the summertime or rainbow trout during the wintertime. And since it's such a big program, we actually use a contractor to stock our catfish in those neighborhood fishing lakes. Mm-hmm. All our other fish, they come from one of our state fish hatcheries. We have several of those throughout the state. Different hatcheries are I guess they're more experts in producing certain types of fish. The closest one here is Athens Hatchery at the Texas Freshwater Fisheries Center. And I recommend, if anybody likes fishing or likes aquatic life, it's only like 2 hours southeast of here in Athens, Texas. Really cool facility. But they also produce fish. We also get fish from our hatchery in San Marcos, and also at Possum Kingdom there's a hatchery. There's 2 other hatcheries, one in East Texas near Jasper, which that's a little bit out of our range as far as getting fish from them. And we have one in Wichita Falls or Electra, Texas, called Dundee State Fish Hatchery.
Oh, okay. So, I thought there'd be one right here since we're on Hatchery Road.
Well, see, the funny thing, let me give a little history of our office here. It used to be a state fish hatchery, or a federal fish hatchery. Believe it or not, this thing is almost 100 years old. It was
this building we're in right now?
Well, not this building, but a couple of warehouse buildings, but this property.
Oh, okay.
They broke ground on the ponds here in 1921, if you can believe that.
Yeah, wow.
The federal government did. And it was a hatchery until, I believe, the mid-'80s, a federal hatchery. And then the state bought it. And unfortunately, with maintenance issues, because it was, you're talking about almost a 90 or 80-year-old facility at that time, that they just didn't have the funds to do it. So it was converted into first a research office and then a fisheries management office. But we have 65 acres here, which is a pretty cool little area.
Yeah, that's big.
And we basically manage it as an urban wildlife area. We don't raise fish here anymore. We office out of here and keep our equipment out here. Okay. And as far as the wildlife management goes, we do have water in some of our ponds, and we get hundreds, if not thousands, of waterfowl in the wintertime that come through here. And we get now we have just a prolific, all kinds of animals we get out here with urban sprawl and things like that. So it's kind of like a little refuge.
Yeah.
And with us being right next to YMCA Camp Carter, they have over 300 acres. And there's a little more developed than our land is, but it's still pretty green over there. And so theoretically, you have almost 400 acres of wild land here for animals and wildlife and stuff to thrive in. So it's pretty neat little area.
So this building that we're in right now, it was originally the federal fish hatchery.
Yeah, and what it was, the way hatcheries work, since the fish are here 24/7, you normally had people working 24/7. So you had the hatchery manager would live at a residence. Which
I was wondering why it looked like a house.
Exactly.
Okay.
And then we had 2 other residences where the fish technicians lived.
Oh, okay.
So it was like a little.
Wow.
You had state provided the housing. Yeah. They paid like a minimum rent just for upkeep and things like that. But and it's a 24-hour job.
That's a pretty good commute though.
Yeah.
Like
exactly.
Wake up and
exactly. Yeah. Exactly. But it's just it's a cool historic facility. Yeah. And, we're right next to Sanson Park. The Fort Worth owns this park across the river.
Okay.
And I believe from the dam at Lake Worth to just past to right at Meandering Road, that's an unchannelized part of the river. So it's it's pretty much undisturbed as far as being tore up and rerouted and things like that. So it's a real unique area back in here for sure.
So the fish that you stock, why do you choose those specific fish? Is it just based on the habitat of the lake, or just...
Well, habitat plays a big part in it. A lot of people think, well, I go fishing and I don't catch anything, so let's stock some fish out there. Yeah. And that is one philosophy. And like I said, our neighborhood fishing program is based on that. It's called a put and take fishery. You put fish in the lake and people take them home. Yeah. It's a harvest-oriented program. However, we only stock fish, first of all, either for a put and take fishery, or if a fish suffered some type of environmental disaster where the fish have been wiped out by some factor.
Right.
Also, fish that do not reproduce a lot or have trouble reproducing, we'll stock those fish. Or if we go out and say, hey, there's a lot of, let's say, forage fish or prey fish out here, hey, we might could put another predator, another sport fish predator that people may want to go fishing for, and we'll put those guys in the lake too.
Cool.
However, like I said, most fish, if you have the habitat and you have the appropriate regulations and people are following the regulations, fish will, they'll pretty much thrive, become self-sustaining, and that's what we strive for, because it gets real expensive, as you can imagine, if you get especially bigger lakes, bigger reservoirs, things like that. So, but yeah, people, and that's a big part of our program now, is when we get calls from either cities or controlling authorities saying, hey, we want to put fish in this lake. I'm like, well, we'll put some fish in there, but let's look at the reason why there's not any fish in there now.
Right.
Because either it's non-habitat or people are taking them out, too many not following the regulations.
So I didn't think about that. You had to also think about what other fish and animals are in that lake too. That makes sense.
Exactly. And like I said, most of our lakes around here, we stock the main species we stock. Like I said, we stock catfish in the neighborhood fishing program lakes, rainbow trout in several smaller lakes. We stock Florida largemouth bass in some of our lakes, and also hybrid striped bass, which we stock in our lakes. And those are pretty much the main species. When we can get them, we'll also stock smallmouth bass in one of our reservoirs, Lake Grapevine. We'll put them in there too. And that's one of the instances where smallmouth are more a cool water, rocky habitat type fish, and Grapevine has plenty of rocks. They just don't have the temperature that we like, and they don't reproduce real well. They have a few times, but nothing that can sustain a fishery. And so we every now and then we'll put some smallmouth back in there.
So maybe this is a dumb question, but how do the fish get here? Like in a big tanker truck, or
it's a trailer pulled by. It depends on how many fish they are. Sometimes they're in the back of a pickup truck with a big hauling box. It's like a big fiberglass white tank. On top of it, it has what we call agitators that keep the water moving, and also we have oxygen stones in there hooked up to oxygen tanks to kind of diffuse the oxygen to keep the fish healthy. If there's a lot of fish, we put them on a big trailer, pull it with a 3500 series truck, big compartments on there, and those compartments are probably close to 100 gallons a piece, I would think. And same thing, we have agitators on there and also oxygen meters and things like that. And you would think, there's two things. You got to have oxygen for fish. You obviously got to have water. You got to have oxygen and water, and you got to have a cool temperature also, because fish, as water temperature goes up, the fish get a little more inefficient in their oxygen transfer, things like that. It becomes stressed, and stressed fish don't like being hauled around. They don't do too well. So when the truck shows up, you want the fish to be in good health, so they'll have the best chance of survival when you put them out there.
Because they're cold-blooded, right?
Yep, they sure are. Their body temperatures are pretty much the same temperature as the water. So the cooler it is, the less metabolism they have, and everything slows down, which is good. If everything speeds up and you haul on a bunch of fish together, they start using the bathroom a lot in the tank and all kinds of stuff like that. They get stressed out more. And stressed, sometimes they get sick, which means they actually regurgitate into fish hauling units, things like that. And so it just messes up the water quality. And so you're just trying to maintain that.
What are zebra mussels, and why are they a problem for our water supplies?
Like I said, zebra mussels, they first showed up in Texas in Lake Texoma, I believe in 2009. And they believe they were brought in by people bringing their boats in from the Midwest, upper Midwest. They first, I believe, got in the Great Lakes pretty much, and I believe in the early to mid 80s. And they come from Eastern Europe, the Black and Caspian Seas, kind of a cool water area. And people say, wow, that's a long ways. How did they get here? Well, they came in on cargo ships, and they, ships that made it all the way to the United States, worked their way to the Great Lakes, and these big ships, they have what they call ballast water in them, and that's just water they pump from the ocean or from the lake into the bow of the boat to keep it, steady. And well, when they get to their port and everything is empty, they don't need that much ballast water, so they just dump the ballast water into whatever lake they're in. And well, those organisms are still living in that water, and so they become infested. And then eventually just start working their way down, and pretty much up and down the Mississippi River is a big problem, is where they're at. In the Midwest, they caused, especially in the Great Lakes there, they caused all kinds of problems because they were clogging up water supply lines, fouling up boat motor engines, just being a mess.
Wow. Because I guess they reproduce pretty quickly.
They reproduce unbelievable.
Yeah.
I can't remember the actual statistics on how many one little female can produce, but
Yeah.
basically they look, like I said, just like a little small little bivalve. They had little stripes on them. That's since they, there's not real complicated one. They call them zebra mussels. They call them zebra
I think
mussels.
I can put that together.
Exactly. And so when they first showed up in Texas, they were found in Sister Grove Creek, or one place they were found. And Sister Grove Creek is basically a water conduit where they would take water out of Lake Texoma and pump it into this creek and send it to Lake Lavon.
Oh, okay.
One thing people have to realize that all these water bodies are connected by pipes a lot of times to supply water and when you need them when things get real dry around here. And so these zebra mussels, like you said, they're real prolific, and they were Sister Grove Creek. We thought it'd be in Lake Lavon. However, we never found any. Lake Lavon is considered suspect, but we haven't found a reproducing population in there. Oh, okay. And then, of course, Lake Lavon is connected to Lake Ray Hubbard by the east fork of the Trinity River. Well, we had reports of zebra mussels in Ray Hubbard, but thankfully we only found a couple of adults. We never found any reproducing populations. And then all of a sudden, Lake Ray Roberts become infested, which is above Lake Louisville, and then Lake Louisville became infested because they're connected. Yeah. And then Lake Bridgeport became infested, and then Lake Eagle Mountain Lake became infested. Lake Worth, it's not considered infested. They are in Lake Worth, but they just don't reproduce. We don't think they reproduce there. Right. And then all in the hill country area, we have numerous lakes in the hill country area that's recently become infested with the adults. And our best guess is they're mainly transported by boaters, the same way they were in those ballast ships. Except we don't have big ships. We just have a bunch of fishing boats, ski boats, recreational boats that carry these things from one lake to another. However, we've had a flooding event back in 2015 and 2017. Just a lot of rain we had. Well, you got to keep in mind, Lake Ray Roberts and Lake Louisville are at pretty much the headwaters. You have the Elm Fork, which flows into the West Fork, which goes all the way down to Lake Livingston in Houston, and we've actually found zebra mussels in Lake Livingston. Oh, wow. I can't remember if Lake Livingston is infested or not because, these things are temperature tolerant. They don't like real warm temperatures and things like that. However, like I said, the biggest threat to them is, first of all, from an economic standpoint, is all the infrastructure from the Fort Worth Water Department to any entity that pumps water out of these lakes. You're going to get zebra mussels lodged inside your infrastructure, your intake.
Clogging things up.
Oh, my goodness, yeah. And so that's going to, the water department can't absorb all that cost, so eventually they're going to have to, pass that cost on to customers. From an ecological standpoint, these zebra mussels are filter feeders. And what they do is they filter feed all the nutrients out of the water, which is not bad in one way, but not good, because if you have limited nutrients, then they take all the nutrients out and it kind of disrupts your food web. So if you don't have enough nutrients, you don't get your phytoplankton, you don't get your zooplankton. Well, that's what fish eat, or your zooplankton, and then you could have a decrease in your fish populations. Oh, okay. Now, thankfully, here in North Texas, as the water department probably knows, we don't have a lack of nutrients in our water from, I don't want to say poor watershed management practices, but we put a lot of fertilizer on our lawns. A lot of animal waste, things like that. So we have a lot of nutrients in our lakes. So the zebra mussels came in, and at first they were really abundant in a lot of our lakes. We haven't really seen a lot of problems with infrastructure. That we don't get a lot of complaints about it. However, if you have a boat on one of these lakes, we have had complaints of boat motors getting tore up because they're getting clogged. Their water intakes are getting clogged up and overheating. And the neat thing about this whole is kind of almost like an evolutionary project also, because when zebra mussels first got into Texas, they thought they couldn't live above water temperatures above 70 degrees. Well, all of a sudden, our lakes around here in the hot summer the surface temps can get to 90 degrees. Yeah. Well, I'll be doggone, those things can live in 90-degree weather. And what Bob McMahon, he's a professor over at UTA, or a retired professor over there, one of his theories is what happens was when you get a new organism somewhere, all these organisms, some of them are cold water tolerant, some of them are hot water tolerant. Well, when you get to Texas, If you're not hot water tolerant, you die off. And the only ones that are left are the ones that can tolerate warmer temperatures.
Sure.
And so that's the reason these zebra mussels have evolved, have adapted to our. Now, they don't thrive in real hot water.
Yeah.
And they kind of like, I guess the one advantage that Texas reservoirs have is that water level fluctuates sometimes drastically.
Mm-hmm.
And these zebra mussels, they attach themselves as adults at a certain depth to get the best temperature they can.
Oh, okay.
Well, if the depth is constantly changing, well, the zebra mussels, they can't detach and swim somewhere else.
Right.
So once they attach, they're stuck.
They're just stuck. Oh.
And so if the water level fluctuates, they may be in an environment where they cannot survive.
Yeah.
So that helps a lot.
Yeah.
Also.
That'd be interesting to look at the ones here that are heat tolerant and compare them to the ones in the Great Lakes.
Yeah, for sure.
If they're adapting that, I mean, they must you said they reproduce very quickly, so they must go through a lot of generations.
And I think they reproduce around here twice a year. We have what we call and the way they reproduce, well, not the way they reproduce, but their offspring are microscopic. You can't see them in the water. So that's what people think, well, I don't have any zebra mussels on my boat. Well, you could have some microscopic babies in your water. You just don't notice in your boat. And usually in the early to late spring, they'll reproduce. And then also in the early fall, they'll reproduce. So we have two what we call settling stages.
Yeah. And
their larvae, swim around so they can find a substrate or an area they like to anchor to, and that's where they become adults.
Yeah.
And things like that.
So I think I read something on your website about, do you sanitize the boats or do something special to them before
exactly
they go into them?
Like I said, before the zebra mussels got here, we really didn't have any regulations at all. Now you had regulations. You couldn't bring things back across state lines for sure, but nothing about water. You could have water in your boat and take it anywhere in the state you want to.
Mm-hmm.
And then we were trying to say, well, how can we combat this? And just from a stewardship standpoint, not only ecologically but also from a boat standpoint, boatmanship standpoint, is just drain. If you drain your boat, you can't. The way the regulation is now is a law. It says once you leave a lake, you cannot have any water in your boat.
Okay. So
you have to pull the drain plugs, things like that. And one of the things we use here at our office, because we're always going to different lakes all the time, is we have a water pressure washer that also has hot water on it.
Okay.
So we wash it off with high pressure hot water.
Oh, okay.
Now, not everybody has that access.
Sure.
Now, some lakes like Lake Texoma, one of the marinas, has a high pressure hot water system they can use.
Oh, cool. So people can just
use
pull up and use it.
Exactly.
Okay.
Now, what we recommend, if you can't do that, in Texas, during the boating season, it's pretty warm around here.
Yeah.
So if you would just leave that, if you go to a different lake, just let your boat dry out for a day or two.
Yeah.
And it won't take very long to dry the thing out. But the key is just to drain all your water out. Pull the plugs before you leave, things like that.
Yeah.
So, and because you can't. It is a law, so you could get a ticket if you get pulled over and you have water in your boat going from one lake to the next.
I mean, I don't know much about boats, but it seems like you'd want to drain it anyway.
It's pretty, to me, it's common sense.
Yeah.
But you have some people who aren't familiar with boating.
Sure.
And there is a learning curve where, hey, I got a boat, but how do I take care of it?
Yeah.
But yeah, pretty much anybody that takes care of their boats, things like that, you're going to take all the water out of it. For sure.
What are some other invasive species that threaten Texas waterways?
Oh my goodness! And where do I start? Well, usually, luckily, right now, zebra mussels, and there's a plant called giant salvinia. Mm-hmm. It's an aquatic plant that is just wreaking havoc in our East Texas lakes, especially Lake Caddo. Oh my goodness! And the reason it's so bad is because it just is real prolific, and you would think plants are a good thing, and yes, plants are very good for fish. However, this plant gets so abundant, it pretty much creates a shade over the surface of the water, where it kills pretty much all plant life underneath it. And if it kills off the plant life underneath the water, well, you don't have the zooplankton, things like that, the water insects that can thrive.
Yeah.
And it can get so thick that you can actually I've seen pictures where it looks like land. Looks like there's grass growing on it and things like that.
So you try to walk out there like a cartoon.
It's like a bog.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, it grows very fast during the warm months.
Yeah.
Like I said, luckily in the North Texas areas, our lakes are they fluctuate so much. It's just not real conducive for any plants to grow hardly. And so we've not been affected here in North Texas by giant salvinia. Now, there was another plant called hydrilla back in the late 60s, early 70s that was really invasive in Texas. However, it's been around now for, almost 80 years. So pretty much any lake that is around, I'm going to assume probably had hydrilla, has been exposed to hydrilla. And if it hadn't shown up at the lake yet and caused any problems, it's probably not going to cause any problems in the future. But it's still a plant that you don't want in your ponds or things like that if you can avoid it, for sure.
I think I saw on your website lionfish.
Lionfish is a saltwater fish.
Yeah.
And yes, they're starting to slowly increase in numbers in some of our saltwater areas and things like that. And
I'm not in this area.
Yeah, and I'm not real familiar with them, but I believe they're like everything else. They just outproduce other native species and become kind of a monoculture or monospecies area, and that's not good for the ecosystem.
They look like they're
kind
very
of
exotic looking.
They're really pretty. I mean, they're not a bad. And I think people, I can't, like I said, don't get me talking out of my lane here, but I think people eat them too. I think they're trying to encourage people to poke them and eat them and things like that. But don't.
They look poisonous.
I think
with all those like spines.
I think they are venomous. Right? I think they are.
Venomous, right?
Yeah. But don't go down there and start eating them until you check. But I think I just remember seeing several documentaries about them on Nat Geo and Discovery Channel and stuff like that. But yeah, like I said, we have a whole. There's a website I can forward you that link to, invasivespecies.org. Believe a lot of times it's plants. Even terrestrial plants. Like I'm an aquatic guy, so I'm more familiar with those. But it's amazing if you look, some flowers that look real pretty in that field that you see, there probably shouldn't be there. There should be a more native. And one of the funniest things, if you drive around now, there's this little tiny yellow flower. It's kind of a derogatory name. It's called bastard cabbage. But it's everywhere now, and it wasn't here 5 years ago. But
I'm sure
everybody said it looks. If you didn't know what, every time I see it, I just, oh my gosh, it's taking over.
Yeah.
But maybe they're taking over. You won't have your bluebonnets, and which is a lot more aesthetically pleasing.
And people love those.
Yeah, exactly. So you look around, you're like, oh my goodness, it's all just going to be just bastard cabbage everywhere. So it's kind of interesting. You can you can talk about exotic species. All the time, and there's always, like I said, we have law enforcement officials always checking fish markets, because like I said, we live in an area with between Dallas and Fort Worth now, over 7 million people, different cultures, which every time you have a different culture, you have different food preferences. And anytime you come from a different area, you want the things you ate in your home, where you come from, which is logical. However, some of those organisms would not do well here or could cause a lot of ecological damage. And so we're always on the lookout and trying to educate people, hey, just because it looks pretty and looks nice, it could cause irreparable harm to our Texas ecosystems, for sure.
And I don't know if kudzu is a big problem here, but I'm from Tennessee.
See, I'm from Georgia, so I know.
Yeah. Oh, sure.
Exactly.
And I always heard that you could eat it, but I never tried it.
I never have either. Luckily I was from South Georgia, but once from middle to Piedmont up north, that's where you see it. It is unbelievable.
It's crazy. It'll take over a whole forest. So we should eat it.
Yeah, like I said, I guess it depends on how hungry you get. It just depends. Well, if you're hungry, I'd eat anything. I'd eat a piece of paper. But there's a lot of other things you could eat besides kudzu that probably taste better, so why do it? And it's also, I'm not sure if you're familiar with the Louisiana, but they have the nutria, which is a
water rat.
Yeah, water rats is what they call them, and they come from South America. Well, they were brought over to Louisiana for food.
Oh, really?
And of course, they got loose, from flooding or whatever else causes them to get loose, and now they're just a problem.
We had some in Houston.
Yeah. They're here.
in some of our parks. When I lived in Houston.
Yeah, they're here on our property here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And
wow.
Everybody says, well, they're not that big a deal, except they burrow and mess up levees, and like Lake Worth has the water department. I'm sure has to keep an eye on critters trying to dig through levees and things like that.
I never would have thought about them, huh? Yeah. I knew they looked gross and like.
Well, people confuse them with beavers, except no, a beaver has a paddle tail. And a nutria has a
a rat, a rat tail, right?
Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah, they're just we call them river rats. Yeah, that's what they look like. But supposedly people eat them, and I never have eaten them.
I had no idea.
Yeah,
I'd probably eat kudzu before I ate one of those.
Well, I'd rather eat some other fish. There's plenty of fish out there.
We already talked about this, and I think that this is a huge part of both of our jobs, but why do you think it's important that we conserve water and we keep it clean.
Well, like I said, I mean, the humans, just from a survival standpoint, I don't want to get too primitive, but there's a couple of things us humans need. We need food, water, and air.
Mm-hmm.
And so we need to take care of those, especially the water and air part, something we can do the best of our ability. Without clean water, I mean, we've seen other countries, a lot of third world countries that we're just so blessed to be kind of ahead of the water supply, water quality curve, where basically what separates Earth from most other planets is water.
Yeah.
If you have water, you have life, and if you have, clean water, pretty much everything that's living benefits from clean water. And one of our big deals, like I said, it's amazing when you go talk to children, probably adults too, and I ask them, I said, well, hey, where your water comes from? And they said, well, it comes from the spigot or the fountain or the kitchen sink. And they're like, well, that's where it ends up.
Yeah.
But, where does it come from? I say, I said, you live in Fort Worth, but it comes from either Lake Worth, it comes from Eagle Mountain, or it could come from Fishin Chambers. And they always had that look, their head turned sideways. What do you mean? I said, the Lake Worth, that's where your water comes from. But I guess, maybe I didn't know either growing up that water comes from there. So, and I tell them everything you do when you go in your yard or when you're driving down the street, whether it litter or whatever you're doing, everything ends up in the water. The water flows, everything goes downhill. It flows into the lakes, it flows into the river, it goes into the ocean.
Yeah.
And so we just have to do our best to protect that. And from a fishery standpoint, obviously, I mean, what's good for Fort Worth Water Department and the Fort Worth Water customers is definitely good for the fish.
Sure.
And also stress not only water quality but water quantity. As you know, we live in an area that drought. We're sometimes going to drought seasons, things like that. And so I tell people, try to conserve water the best you can. Try not to waste it. Try not to water your lawns too much, things like that. But then again, that's a whole other thing that we're talking about, how different cultures bring plants. People like lush yards and big plants. And I'll say, well, there's plants here in Texas that are adapted to this environment. So why don't you plant those?
Yeah.
Now, you may have to, are they pretty? To me, they are.
Yeah.
But you had to change your paradigm. Well, I don't live in England. I don't have the country garden or live in the Northeast areas where you get more rain. But there's plants here that are adapted. You don't use as much water.
Yeah.
And so there's enough water for people, enough water for businesses, enough water for the fish and wildlife. So it's a big thing.
We're all about planting native, and we have our water saving seminars where we talk about the best ways to save water in the garden, and it's a big thing is plant native, because they don't need as much water as some, like you said, some plant a beast would need.
Exactly.
But let's see.
And I always make fun of people like, I love green grass too, but I mean, if I could tear up my whole yard and just put wildscaping in there, I would. Because I love birds and butterflies and all this. But I always make fun of people. I said, okay, you have this nice front yard, but nobody ever goes in the front yard. And you get mad because you got to mow it when it's hot. So I'm like, well, put something a little less low maintenance out there that you don't have to take care of, and things like that. And you'll be surprised how good it looks and things like that.
Absolutely,
for sure. And
I think about lawns a lot and how wasteful they are with
they
water,
are.
and you use gas to mow them, and you use your time and everything.
Like I said, if growing up when I had kids, I made sure my backyard was conducive for playing in the backyard and things like that. But if that area wasn't being used by us humans, by my family, I'm gonna stick some native plants over there.
Sure.
And just water them once a week or once every whatever it takes to keep them going, because it's not going to be near as maintenance oriented as your grass will, things like that. So
your facility's right on the shores of Lake Worth.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever had any run-ins with the Lake Worth monster?
Like I said, the funny thing about our field sampling is some of our field sampling occurs at night.
Oh, okay.
And we've been on Lake Worth several times at night. And every time we go by, it's called Goat Island.
Uh-huh.
Every time we go by, we talk about the Lake Worth monster. And so every time we go by there, we have our flashlights. And we always kind of make fun. Hey, make sure you don't see the Fort Worth Lake monster with there. Now, what would I do if I saw it? I don't know. I'd probably just hit the gas on the boat and not tell anybody because I'd be too scared. But as of today, we have not seen the Lake Worth monster.
Darn. Okay. I've hit a dead end with my research.
I mean, it's amazing what you can think about. But I mean, there are critters in the nature center. I mean, they have alligators up there, and most people think alligators are monsters.
Right.
Which they're not. They're native species to Texas, and we're on their northern range. And I always try to tell people, they say, "Oh we'll get a call." In fact, we got calls this spring, but I saw an alligator. I'm like, okay, well, he's not gonna, as long as humans don't interact with them,
don't put your head
don't
in
feed
its
them.
mouth.
Yeah, don't feed them, or make sure your buddies aren't feeding it and having a good time with it.
Yeah.
It's not gonna bother you. And
Sure.
and I'm kind of a realist. I'm kind of a data person. I'm like, well, unfortunately, there'll be people this next 2 weeks or week that get hurt or killed in car accidents.
Mm-hmm.
There probably won't be any reports of people getting bit by alligators on Lake Worth.
Yeah.
I don't think there's ever been a report. So, it's okay,
Yeah.
we're worried about alligators, but we're not worried about driving to work. Well, okay, that's a little bit. I mean, you can be worried about alligators, don't get me wrong, but just respect them. Just respect nature, and
Sure.
nature will respect you.
That's a good point.
Sure.
So respect the Lake Worth monster, and he won't.
That's exactly right. Now, you might not can negotiate. If you've seen him, I don't, you ever seen those beef jerky commercials?
Yeah.
I kind of picture that. As long as you're cool, everything will be fine. But if you're going to be kind of a jerk or a smart aleck or something like that, you might take it out on you.
Well, he's supposed to be 7 feet tall, so you don't want to
Wow.
mess. You don't want to mess with that.
Hey, with Dirk just retiring yesterday or last game, maybe the Mavs could use him. Can he dribble and run?
All that fur, he's gonna get pretty hot.
He would
on
be.
there
You'd have to have a
on the
lot of
court.
water over there. For sure.
What first got you interested in a career with Texas Parks and Wildlife?
Well, first of all, like I said, growing up, I loved outdoors. I'm not a big hunter. I don't hunt a lot. I don't have anything against people who hunt, because
Sure.
it's definitely outdoor activities, just a little more involved. Where when I was growing up, just me and my dad and my grandfather and my cousins, I would go fishing all the time. And then once I got a little bit too old to hang around my parents, I didn't want to hang around them too much. Me and my friends would always go down. I lived I'm growing up in southeast Georgia. I was less than a mile from the river, the Satilla River in southeast Georgia, real cool little black water river. So every summer, pretty much every day, we could ride our bikes down there and just fish all day long. And then I was also only about an hour from the coast. So during certain times of the year, I'd go fishing down there. I just really fell in love with it. And like everybody else, I have older kids now who are trying to determine what they're going to do for a living.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, what do I want to do? I want to be outside. And I'd never heard of a fisheries biologist before. I'm like, what? No way, that can't be true. There can't be a job like that. And, I went to community college and just majored in biology. And then I was just fixing to graduate community college. Hey, what are you going to do? Are you going to teach school, or are you going to try to be some kind of other educator or whatever, or go into medicine? And me and my dad were looking through a book, and the University of Georgia said, hey, it's got a forestry school, but you can also major in fisheries. I'm like,
cool.
Are you kidding me? Yeah, really? Wow. Where do I sign up?
Yeah.
And luckily everything fell into place there. I graduated from Georgia, and then I went to graduate school at Mississippi State. And that's like everybody else. You're getting ready to graduate. Hey, I got time to hit the road and start working.
Yeah.
And there was a job open here in Texas as a fisheries biologist, and luckily I got that job as an assistant biologist, and I just worked my way up to be the district biologist.
Cool.
So pretty lucky guy to have a job like this. And I always try to tell people I'm real lucky, and I didn't do anything special to get this job. I did work my tail off in school to make good grades, things like that, and just show interest. And I tell people to get involved, whatever your heart's telling you to do. You can't sit at home and be on your phone all day and watching TV and expect for anything to happen to you. Yeah. You got to get out and enjoy whatever your passion is. Yeah. And then and hopefully it'll fall into place for you. It may not, but at least you're trying to give it your best effort. But I tell kids all the time, looking at that phone, and nothing's going to happen watching the phone. It's going to watch going out and enjoying interacting with things. Yeah. Whatever your passion is. So.
But do you get to travel a lot as part of your job?
We do get to travel. Like I said, mainly just in-state. We have different districts have different projects going on. So I've been all the way to Lake Amistad and Del Rio, all the way to Lake Caddo, all the way up to Lubbock, or Amarillo, those areas like that. So pretty much all the way down to even Sam Rayburn in East Texas, stuff like that. So we travel around different parts of the state, just depending on what projects and what help people need getting those projects accomplished. And I tell people also, like I said, Dallas-Fort Worth, it's a big area, but man, Texas has so many, neat ecological areas. You have the piney woods in East Texas. You have the desert in Southwest Texas. You have the hill country. Mm-hmm. You have the coast. I mean, you have all kinds of things. And so just having time, if you have time to go out and explore the natural state or natural areas of Texas, it's unbelievable. It's a really unique area.
So it's so
place.
diverse.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. And again, it's like we can all look at it, in magazines and pictures, but it's something else to actually go out and experience it for sure. So I encourage people, if you love the outdoors, Texas is a good place to be.
Yeah, it's the only place where the first time I came to Texas, I crossed the state line and I saw a sign that said El Paso 900 something miles, and I was like, oh wow,
exactly.
you can be in the same state and drive 900 miles. It's crazy.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
and I've been to, I lived in Houston for a while, and it's like a tropical climate with palm trees and everything, and then you go to El Paso and it's a desert, and it's crazy.
It is.
So
and you just got to have a decent car to drive around, some gas money. That's pretty much pretty much about it.
So I pretty much ask everybody this, and it's sometimes a hard question to think about, because nobody ever really thinks about it. But can you imagine what a day on your job would be like without water?
And that's I kind of, like I said, I'm getting to be an older guy now. I've been working for a department over 20 years now, and you always think about the future. You don't. A lot of people get hung up in the past, but I always try to look. We're trying to be ahead of the game, so to speak. And we couldn't function without water, and without water, a lot of, I would say, culture goes away, because a lot of people love to hunt, they love to fish. Well, without any water, all that goes away. And it's one thing if there's climate change, is happening for sure, things we can't control. We might could do things about them, and we probably will in the future. But to neglect things that are here that we could preserve for future generations and for future citizens and things like that, it worries me. And not necessarily, just not from an unwise use standpoint, just from a population standpoint. There's going to be a lot of big questions probably in 20 years or 30 years on what we're going to do about this water situation.
Sooner than you think.
Exactly. And I know the water department, we're real trying to be proactive on water conservation. And I just hope and wish that everybody in North Texas would be water conscious, and just realize that there's every time you use water, there's something else that's not going to get water. And like I said, and just from a financial standpoint, water coming from the tap is fairly feasible right now, and I'll guarantee you, I'm not sure the numbers on that, but eventually that's going to become one of the most valuable resources anywhere is water.
Sure.
And so, we're paying so much now, but in 20 years, it may be unbelievable amount of money we're paying for water. Regardless, of what we do to try to take care of, just from the scarcity and the value of it. For sure. So, but as far as that goes, I can't imagine, an area like Texas, or not having adequate water supplies for fisheries and wildlife. It'd be a sad day. I'll say that.
Absolutely.
For sure.
What's the favorite part of your job?
The favorite part of my job is being outside. Some people, I have a younger son, he's made for inside. Having a desk job or being inside, he'll love it. But not me. Like right now, I'm itching to get out. Hey, what can I do on the lakes? And things like that. So, was
it a struggle to get him to go fishing with you?
Oh yeah, he would tolerate it. And I can remember one of my funniest stories with I have an older son who loves the outdoors, but we were fishing one time, and when you go fishing, you don't catch fish all the time.
Sure.
And so when you start catching them, that's a special time.
That's exciting.
I told my younger son, I said, hey, we'll just fish for like an hour or two, and we'll see what happens. Well, we start catching them, and I mean catching them good. Well, he's watching his clock. That hour goes, that 2 hour mark goes by. He said, Dad, it's time to go. And I'm like, son, we are tearing these fish up. This doesn't happen very often. Well, Dad, you said 2 hours. Okay, son, we'll leave.
That's funny.
But for the most part, we're out on the lakes at least one time a week, or maybe 2 times a week. Cool. Depending on what we're doing. But it's just being able to go out and enjoy nature. Being outside and things like that. It's just I'm really blessed to have a job like this, because I'll tell my crew, because it's like any other job, you kind of get tired of doing the same thing over and over again. But I said, just we do it for the people who can't get outside. So when they do get a chance to go outside, let's make sure we're doing our job to try to make it as enjoyable as we can for them. That's what we try to do. So
I like the outside too. I love being outside, but I also do like being inside. So maybe it's like half and half.
Well, it depends on now. Coming up about July or August, you come back to him. I'll say,
Sure.
"Oh,
Yeah. Yeah. In the summer here, it's a different story. I like being inside.
Exactly.
But like as a kid, I remember I always liked fishing, but I didn't like fishing with my one grandfather who would take everything like way too seriously, and so you couldn't talk, you couldn't do anything. And I just remember going fishing with him and having the worst time because all I wanted to, because he'd get too intense about it, and I would just want to sit there and like read a comic book or something, and he'd get mad, and then, so he made it not so much fun to fish.
Yeah. And like I said, it's kind of funny because I remember going fishing with my grandfather and my dad. And every time, like me and my dad, we just go out there, especially as you get older, you and your parents, not necessarily quarrel, but, what are you going to talk about? We've talked about everything. Yeah. But just being outside with somebody you care about or have a relationship with, is just, even if you don't say anything, that unspoken part of it is real relaxing and things like that. But yeah, don't worry, if you want to go fishing with one of us at the office, we'll take you out. We're not too uptight. Now I'll get on to you if you don't catch any fish, or if I catch one you don't, I'll definitely make fun of you. But
maybe I'll take you up on that.
You can talk if you want to. I won't get too mad.
I might like to go out on one of your night things past the lake.
Yeah, for sure. You
go
can
to
sample with
us.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, that'd be
for
cool.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
we'll talk about that.
We do. Like I said, right now we have hoop nets set on Lake Arlington. We're trying to catch some channel catfish, and we're pulling those tomorrow.
Did you say hoop?
Hoop.
Oh, hoop nets.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so but different times of the year depends on what gear we're using. And we also do some daytime we call electro fishing, where we collect fish with electricity. Pretty much, it's kind of a cool. If you've never seen it, it's really, really a neat thing. It's probably the most fun thing we do.
I'm picturing you putting some kind of device in the water, like a sci-fi device, and it shocks them and they float up.
That's exactly. Well, it's just similar to that. Except our device is a generator, that you have at your home or whatever, and it goes through a transformer box, and from the transformer box, the electricity current goes through these wires, and the wires are connected to these steel rods, and they're in the water, and then it produces a current. And the fish, thankfully, their nervous system is different than ours. So when they get electrocuted, it doesn't mess with their heart or anything like it does humans. And so they get stunned and float to the top, and we scoop them up, put them in our live well, and do whatever we need to do to them, and throw them back.
Oh, that's neat.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
No idea.
Oh yeah.
I just when you said you would go out and sample the populations, I just saw you sitting there with a pole and like.
Well, like I tell people, I wish I could catch enough fish with my pole to write reports, but. And we catch hundreds, of fish with our sampling, with electrofishing or gill netting and things like that. So you would have to fish. Or you had to be a lot better fisherman than I am to catch those fish. There's probably some people that could catch them, but not me. I'm not one of those guys. So I cheat when I go fish.
Do you have a favorite fish that you like to catch?
I do have a favorite fish. Like I said, I told you we'll have sunfish. Sunfish is a group of fish, and there's different individual species within those sunfish. You have bluegills. You have long ears, green sunfish, warmouse, and you also have this thing called the red ear sunfish. And he's by far my favorite sunfish. And I guess he's my favorite because I grew up catching a lot of them when I was a little kid. And also the red breast sunfish, which is a more river type sunfish. And the red ear, his nickname is called the shell cracker because he actually eats snails from the bottom of ponds and rivers and things like that. So it's really a neat fish. They get pretty big. They'll get up to 1.5 pounds, 2 pounds sometimes, stuff like that. So they're real fun to catch.
So my last question is, if you had to pick one movie to live in, what would that movie be and why?
Oh my!
And can I take a guess at what yours would be?
Go ahead.
Would it be A River Runs Through It?
A River Runs Through It is really, and like I said, it is kind of a tearjerker at the end. But it's life. You lose people as you're growing up.
Yeah.
And the most thing about that movie that really caught my eye was the guy was a little kid fishing this same river. Yeah. Then he got older. Of course, his dad had passed away. Pretty much everybody he knew had passed away, but the river was still the same. And so there's always meaning in that. Yeah. So when you're in these environmental areas, you're there, and theoretically you can think about 100 years ago there were other people there.
Sure.
Enjoying the resource, things like that. So to me, it provides a connection. That you're here with this river, and although you're not here you're not going to be here for a long time, you're part of that river, just like the river's part of you when you're there. And so, just enjoy the resources that are around you and the people that are around you, and encourage them to enjoy the aquatic resources we have in the state of Texas.
I didn't want to answer your question for you.
Well, I'm trying to think of. Because my movies, it depends on what day you ask. A lot of my movies hey, Josie Wells.
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
You know, but that's well, I always think the good old days were good, but I like air conditioning and stuff.
Yeah.
and hot showers.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. But you know, one thing I've always fascinated me was, you know, if you could have been one of the first people to come to an area, and just how much things have changed since then. And you know, if I could take all the modern day conveniences and take them back to the 1600s, oh my gosh, it probably, from an outdoor standpoint and a fishing standpoint.
Oh yeah, that'd be.
Oh my
incredible.
goodness, if I had a fishing pole back in 1600 at Galveston,
Yeah.
I mean, there is no telling what kind of fishing. You know, you did definitely have some fishing stories then,
And probably some pirate stories if
Oh,
it was
no.
Galveston.
No doubt. No doubt.
Yeah, I always think about like when I lived in Houston, I did not like it at all because it was so hot, and there was never any winter at all.
Yeah.
And I like a nice cold season, so
Yeah,
you can appreciate the warm
as
season.
As you get older,
Yeah.
like growing up, like me and Andy, my coworker, we always talk about, man, I used to love it when it was hot. It didn't bother me, but as I get older, give me the winters. Give me the cold. I don't know why it is, but the heat, I can't stand it.
Here it's better, because we get a little bit more of a winter.
Yeah.
My allergies are a lot worse here.
Oh man, yeah.
But,
especially now, but you're struggling the last couple of days.
It's bad.
Oh my goodness.
But when I lived in Houston, I was miserable. I was there for like 4 years, and I hated it. And and so I'd always think about like the first people to settle Houston, like the first pioneers to go through Houston.
Yeah.
Why did they stop in Houston?
Yeah.
And say like, this is great. Let's live here. Why didn't they just keep going?
Yeah.
And
well, that's the river, to transfer the bay is, and so there's probably a lot of food. I always think food and water. That's where people. But like, have you ever been to Big Bend? That area?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But that's what I ask myself every day. I'm like, well, there's people that lived out here. Did their horses die? Did their wagon tear up where they couldn't go any further?
Yeah.
And this is it, folks. We gotta stick it out.
Here we are.
I mean, those areas, I love to visit them, but I don't want to live there. That's for sure. In Houston, I've been to Houston a few times, but we went to Galveston for the first time this past winter, and it's a different kind of coastal area. I mean, if you go, I grew up in kind of the Florida Panhandle area, from Panama City to St. George Island, and it's so much different.
Well,
I mean, it's still hot.
It's pretty. The water's pretty. Galveston does not have pretty water.
Exactly.
So,
and they've kind of industrialized everything.
Sure.
Which, I mean, I guess you got to sell your soul to the devil sometimes to make economics work and things like that. But I prefer areas that aren't developed, not developed like that for sure.
Well, I think that's all my questions. Thank you so much for doing this.
No, like I said, thanks for
it.
doing it. And like I said, I just encourage people to, conserve their water, both quantity and quality wise. And like I said, don't forget where your water comes from, and what's good for us and good for water is good for the fish and wildlife.
Yeah,
that's for sure. So,
absolutely.
Yeah.
I think I just heard a dog. Oh, there he is.
Oh my gosh.
I didn't know there was a dog in here.
Yeah, he's real active, as you can.
What's his name?
His name is Duke.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess I've had him, 8 years now. I got him from the Fort Worth Animal Shelter. So,
yeah. That's awesome.
He's a cool guy. And he's kind of a big guy. About 100 pounds. So. Well, he's nice. He doesn't get too riled up. But, I said, no.
That's great. I wondered why you stepped over a dog door later. That explains it.
Yeah, like I said, we have doggy daycare out here. That's one of the benefits of my job.
That's great.
Don't tell anybody, but I'm sure if the people at my headquarters found out, we might get in trouble. But
I can take all that out.
No,
okay.
It's fine. Nobody. I'm the boss here. So as long as nobody gets hurt, we're good. I think.
As long if he bites me, maybe that'd be. I'll cut that out of the podcast.
If he bites somebody, we might have to make a rules change. But for now, he's good. Is that right? Yep. As long as you got some food, he always likes food. So
yeah,
he'd be a friend forever.
Well, does he like fish?
He likes anything. So.
Well, lucky for him.
Anything he can get his lips on, he's gonna try to eat.